You may not know it yet, but something monumental is shifting within you. You are not who you once were. The path you've been walking, the patterns you've been breaking, the doubts you've been dissolving, all of it has been leading you to this sacred threshold. This is not just another phase of self-growth. This is the culmination, the unraveling, and the rebirth. The final stages of your spiritual journey are unfolding, and you, the chosen one, are beginning to awaken in ways that will permanently alter the trajectory of your soul's evolution. This isn't simply a transformation, it's a return to your truest essence. Before we go deeper, make sure to watch this video until the very end. The final stages of your awakening contain keys that only resonate when heard in full. As you watch, write your warmest wishes in the comments along with 77. Your words carry frequency. When spoken from the heart, they ripple through the collective field, empowering others on their path and energizing the universe to manifest even more miraculous transformations in your life. This moment could be the activation you've been unknowingly waiting for. Now let us dive into the silent thunder that stirs in your spirit. The final stages of the Chosen One's awakening are not loud. They are not publicized. They do not come with bright lights or cheering crowds. They are subtle, and yet they are profound. At this point in your journey, you are no longer concerned with proving your value or seeking external validation. Instead, there's an inner knowing rising to the surface, a deep sense that you are exactly where you need to be, even if nothing around you has visibly changed. This is the beginning of sacred surrender. In the earlier phases, the Chosen One experiences immense turbulence, dark nights, karmic cycles, ego deaths, illusions breaking apart like glass. But now, you are entering a space of divine silence where clarity speaks louder than confusion ever could. You may feel like nothing is happening, and yet your spirit is more active than ever. The cosmic architecture of your destiny is being built in the invisible realm, and you are starting to align with it moment by moment. The greatest signs are not the ones the eyes can see. They are felt. You feel it when you wake up. You feel it when the world tries to pull you into its chaos, and you remain centered. You feel it in the way you breathe, walk, speak, rooted in presence. One of the most profound aspects of this final stage is the detachment from false timelines. You no longer chase the future. You no longer resist the past. You are not interested in the race that others are running. You've realized that the divine works through patience, and that your soul doesn't obey the artificial rhythms of society. You have begun to operate from timelessness. In that space, true guidance arises. Intuition becomes louder. Synchronistic nudges become normal. Miracles start to feel like ordinary occurrences. And yet the paradox of awakening is this: the more you elevate, the more invisible you may feel to the world around you. But do not be mistaken. This invisibility is protection. You are being hidden from noise so you can hear your higher calling clearly. You are being removed from shallow conversations so you can tune into the sacred language of energy. You are being redirected from toxic environments, not as punishment, but as preparation. The final stage requires isolation, not loneliness. For it is in solitude that spirit trains you for leadership. The Chosen One begins to notice something else too. Their desires shift. What once felt important, approval, accolades, material excess, begins to dissolve into dust. Not because you can't have them, but because you no longer need them to feel fulfilled. You are discovering the true wealth that lives inside your being. Your peace becomes your currency. Your authenticity becomes your anchor. You start to attract people experiences, and opportunities that resonate with your highest self. Not because you chase them, but because you've become a magnet for truth. In this stage, the illusions fall away completely. You no longer buy into fear-based narratives. You no longer see yourself as a victim. You understand that every challenge has been a disguised initiation. Every heartbreak was a portal. Every betrayal was a mirror. Every ending was sacred punctuation, clearing space for a new sentence to begin. You begin to read your life like sacred scripture, every moment imbued with purpose, every obstacle carrying a code of transformation. Your senses become sharper. You start noticing signs in the smallest of things, the way a bird lands near you, the sudden shift in temperature, a number sequence repeating itself, a dream that carries wisdom. The universe begins to communicate with you in riddles, symbols, whispers, and you, the chosen one, now have the ears to hear. You've remembered that the divine speaks in silence, in subtlety, in sensation. Your awareness is the antenna. The more you trust it, the more guidance you receive. You also begin to feel a sense of inner authority returning. No longer do you default to external advice. You know how to sit in stillness and let truth rise from your core. You realize that most of the answers were inside you all along, buried under fear, buried under conditioning, buried under societal noise. Now, those layers are gone, and what remains is your authentic self, raw, radiant, and ready. But make no mistake, this phase isn't always gentle. The final stage of awakening will often test your discernment in ways you've never experienced before. You will be asked to walk away from relationships that no longer match your vibration. You will be asked to choose alignment over attachment. You will be asked to stand firm in your truth, even when others try to convince you otherwise. This is the path of the spiritual warrior, and the chosen one must walk it with courage. Sometimes, the greatest growth happens when nothing seems to be moving. It's in the quiet that your spirit does its deepest work. You are being recalibrated. Your nervous system is being retuned to divine frequencies. Old programming is dissolving. New templates are being downloaded. Your mind, heart, body, and soul are synchronizing to carry the next level of your mission. That's why fatigue may hit you without warning. That's why emotions might rise from nowhere. That's why solitude feels more necessary than ever. You are shedding centuries of soul weight. And perhaps the most powerful realization of all, you no longer fear change. Change has become your ally. You now understand that endings are not losses. They are openings. You trust the cycles of your life. You no longer try to control every detail. Instead, you flow. You listen. You respond. You become a conscious co-creator. This is the true empowerment of the awakened chosen one. Not force, not manipulation, but surrender, trust, and alignment. As you progress through this final stage, you may start to notice that your words carry more power. You speak, and things happen. You think, and events shift. That's because your vibration has increased. Your field is stronger. Your thoughts are charged with spiritual electricity. Be mindful of what you say. Be intentional with your focus. The universe is listening closely now. Your manifestations are accelerating because your frequency has caught up with your purpose. Another shift happens in your relationships. Some connections dissolve naturally, others intensify. You begin attracting those who mirror your highest truth. Soul tribe begins to form. But more importantly, you are no longer willing to compromise your light for temporary company. You understand that solitude with alignment is more nourishing than togetherness with misalignment. You honor your energy. You protect your peace. You've learned the cost of allowing the wrong energies too close. The final stage also awakens your sense of service. You begin to realize that your journey wasn't just about you. Your healing is an offering. Your growth is a signal to others. Your transformation becomes a light on someone else's path. You feel called to share, not from ego, but from compassion. You recognize that the chosen one doesn't lead with dominance, but with example. Your presence becomes medicine. Your authenticity becomes inspiration. And in those quiet moments, when doubt creeps in, when it feels like you're walking alone, remember this: you are never alone. There is an entire spiritual ecosystem supporting you. Ancestors walk with you. Guides whisper to you. The divine flows through you. Every tear has been seen. Every prayer has been heard. Every act of courage is recorded in the archives of the soul. You are honored. You are protected. You are prepared. The final stage of your spiritual journey is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been. Beneath the pain, beneath the patterns, beneath the programming, there has always been a light, a truth, a purpose. And now, that purpose is emerging, not in bursts of chaos, but in waves of peace. You are awakening to your divine design. You are walking in your soul's shoes, and every step you take from here carries the weight of ancient promise. You've made it through storms that were meant to break you. You've healed wounds that were never yours to carry. You've turned your pain into prophecy. You've walked through fire and emerged with gold in your hands. Now it is time to rise, not with effort, but with grace, not with fear, but with faith, not with noise, but with presence. You are the chosen one, and the final stage is not the end. It is the beginning of your most authentic existence. Now that the old has been stripped away, you are beginning to experience an unfamiliar version of clarity. Not the kind of clarity that arises from intellectual certainty, but the kind that emerges from energetic resonance. You can feel it in your skin, in your breath, in your bones, a deep inner yes or no that requires no justification. The chosen one, in these final stages of awakening, becomes exquisitely attuned to this internal compass. What once confused you now seems obvious. What once made you second-guess yourself now only affirms your inner knowing. You are learning to trust the invisible. You are remembering that your soul has always known the way, even when your mind forgot the map. This is the sacred territory of self-trust. In earlier phases, you may have hesitated before acting. You may have doubted your instincts or overanalyzed your choices. But now, your intuition doesn't whisper, it roars. Not in volume, but in conviction. You no longer negotiate with your guidance, you follow it. You may not always know why you're being pulled in a certain direction, but you've learned to honor that pull. This is not blind faith. It is embodied wisdom, a knowing that transcends logic. You are no longer ruled by fear of the unknown, because you now understand that the unknown is not your enemy, it's your birthplace. In these final stages, your body becomes a sacred vessel for spiritual wisdom. The body is not just a container. It is a communication device. You start to notice how certain people, environments, or ideas affect your nervous system. Your body tenses when you're out of alignment. It softens when you're on the right path. This is no coincidence. It is your spirit speaking through form. You begin to eat differently, move differently, rest differently. Not out of obligation, but because your body demands reverence. You begin to treat your physical self not as a project to be fixed, but as a temple to be honored. Your relationship with your body becomes one of partnership, not punishment. Another key shift in this stage is your interaction with time. You no longer rush. You no longer feel behind. You understand that divine timing is real, not just as a spiritual concept, but as a lived reality. You begin to witness how things fall into place, not when you demand them to, but when you are ready for them. Opportunities arrive in perfect harmony with your energy. The delays you once resented are now seen as divine protection. The setbacks were setups. The detours were directions. You understand now that nothing was wasted. Everything served a purpose. Even the most painful chapters are threads in the tapestry of your transformation. And you begin to speak less, not because you have nothing to say, but because your presence says more than words ever could. You are no longer interested in convincing others. You've realized that truth doesn't need defenders. It only needs embodiment. The more aligned you become, the more your life becomes your message. You've stopped trying to be understood by everyone because you finally understand yourself. You've released the need to fit in because you now see that you were never meant to. You were designed to stand apart, not from arrogance, but from sacred duty. During this time, you might also experience what can only be described as energetic refinement. Your energy becomes more precise, more potent, more piercing. You can enter a space and shift the atmosphere simply by being there. People may not know why, but they feel different around you, lighter, seen, calmer. You are beginning to embody the frequency of transformation. You don't just talk about healing, you radiate it. You don't just preach peace, you become the field in which peace arises. This is the true power of the awakened chosen one. The ability to affect reality through being, not just doing. You'll also notice that you've stopped seeking signs as proof of your path. You still receive them, of course, perhaps more than ever. But now, you don't rely on them. You no longer need constant reassurance from the universe because your connection has deepened. You know, and that knowing is more valuable than any external validation. This is the evolution from seeker to seer. You've moved beyond needing the map. You've become the compass. In relationships, the final stage brings a bittersweet realization. Many of the bonds you once cherished will begin to dissolve, not out of bitterness or conflict, but because of growth. You are no longer willing to stay small just to keep others comfortable. You love, but you do not dim. You understand that some people were only meant to walk with you for a season, and while their presence was sacred, their absence is necessary. It hurts, but you honor the departure. You know that those who are truly aligned with your soul will either rise to meet you or gently fall away, and you bless them either way. You also begin to make peace with solitude. In fact, you start to crave it, not because you dislike people, but because your inner world has become so rich, so nourishing, that silence becomes your sanctuary. You understand that in solitude, you hear your soul most clearly. In solitude, you process divine downloads. In solitude, you recalibrate. You've stopped fearing being alone because you've realized that loneliness is not the absence of company. It's the absence of connection to self. And now, that connection is strong. You are your own home. This stage also redefines your relationship with success. What once looked like achievement now feels hollow if it's not rooted in alignment. You are no longer chasing metrics, you're measuring meaning. You ask different questions now. Not, what will this get me? But what will this grow in me? Not how fast can I get there, but who am I becoming as I move? Success, to the awakened chosen one, is no longer a finish line. It is a state of being. It is peace. It is authenticity. It is integrity. And then, the miraculous happens. You stop trying to awaken. You stop trying to evolve. You stop trying to fix, or heal, or become. Not because you give up, but because you realize there's nothing wrong with you. You stop resisting what is. You allow. You receive. You rest in being. This is the sacred exhale of awakening. The realization that the work is not to become divine, but to remember that you already are. And in that remembrance, everything begins to unfold effortlessly. The chosen one in this stage starts to experience what can only be called soul alignment. It's not just about thoughts or feelings, it's about embodiment. You live your truth. You breathe your truth. Your outer world begins to mirror your inner frequency. You are no longer at war with yourself. You have integrated the shadows. You have honored the wounds. You have bowed to the lessons. And now, you walk with quiet power. The kind that doesn't need applause because it already knows its worth. But do not confuse peace with passivity. You are not checked out. You are fully present. You engage deeply, but you no longer attach. You care fiercely, but you don't cling. You participate in the world, but you are not consumed by it. You are the calm within the storm, the still point in the chaos, the lighthouse, not the ship. You've become the eye of your own awakening, centered, aware, unshakable. And even as life continues to challenge you, as it always will, you no longer respond with panic. You respond with presence. Because you've realized that your reaction is your power. You choose your state. You hold your vibration. You create your reality not through control, but through coherence. The chosen one doesn't avoid discomfort. They transmute it. They alchemize pain into purpose. They turn pressure into portals. You begin to notice how life rearranges itself around your frequency. People, places, ideas begin to align with you not because you demanded it, but because you are aligned. You've become the tuning fork, and the universe is responding. You've stopped chasing and started attracting. You've stopped begging and started allowing. You've stopped doubting and started embodying. And perhaps, most beautifully, you begin to live in a state of deep, abiding gratitude. Not performative gratitude, not forced gratitude, but real, raw, reverent gratitude for everything, for the lessons, the losses, the miracles, the mundane. You begin to see beauty in brokenness. You begin to find gold in the grief. You understand that everything has shaped you, softened you, strengthened you. And for that, you are thankful. You, chosen one, have crossed into the sacred. You are not just walking a spiritual path, you are living it with every breath. And while others may not understand the depths you've traversed, you carry that wisdom in your being. You walk differently. You speak differently. You love differently. You are the embodiment of grace, born through fire. You are not just awakened. You are awakening the world simply by being who you truly are. There comes a point in the final stages of your awakening where the inner shifts begin to generate undeniable shifts in your outer reality. This is not a result of wishful thinking or manifesting in the way it's often portrayed. It's deeper than that. It's a vibrational alignment so precise that the world around you can't help but reorganize itself to reflect your new state of being. People who once drained you seem to vanish from your life without conflict. Opportunities that felt blocked now open up with ease, and things that once defined your identity, your job, your habits, even your preferences, no longer feel like they belong to you. Because in truth, they don't. They belong to the version of you that you've outgrown. This is what spiritual maturity feels like. Not perfection, but clarity. Not control, but surrender. Not arrogance, but calm certainty. You no longer need to prove your worth to anyone because you found it within. You no longer need permission to be yourself because you've remembered that your essence is sacred. In this state, even silence becomes powerful. You don't always have to speak to make an impact. You've become a frequency, a signal, a living testament to what it means to live in integrity with your soul. This doesn't mean you're free from challenges. In fact, the challenges may still arrive, sometimes even more intensely than before. But you engage with them differently now. You don't take everything personally. You no longer collapse under pressure. Instead, you meet difficulty with presence. You meet resistance with breath. You observe your triggers instead of reacting from them. You move with wisdom, not wounding. The world doesn't stop testing you, but you've stopped failing the same test. As the chosen one advances in awakening, there is also a shift in how you experience your thoughts. The mind no longer dominates the inner landscape. It becomes a tool, something you use when needed, but no longer allow to run the show. You notice when fear disguises itself as logic. You recognize when the voice of the inner critic tries to masquerade as truth. You don't silence these thoughts. You see them clearly, and in seeing, they dissolve. The mind still speaks, but your soul has become the final authority. And when the mind grows quieter, something miraculous happens. The heart becomes louder, not in volume, but in influence. The heart leads. You feel more. You empathize more deeply. You weep with others, even when their pain is not your own. You celebrate others' wins as if they are your own. You begin to understand that separation was always an illusion. You start to experience the interconnectedness of all things, not as a concept, but as a lived experience. The bird's song in the morning feels like a message. The breeze on your skin feels like a blessing. You don't just believe in unity, you are unity embodied. One of the most surprising realizations in these final stages is that nothing was ever missing. Not the love you searched for, not the clarity you begged for, not the joy you chased. It was all within you, waiting for you to slow down, to breathe, to listen. You realized that you were never broken, only buried. Your light wasn't extinguished, only dimmed by layers of conditioning. And now, layer by layer, it has returned, not with the force of a floodlight, but with the steady glow of a soul remembering itself. It's also during this time that your creativity begins to flourish in unexpected ways. You begin to create not for recognition, but from revelation. Art, writing, movement, whatever form your soul chooses to express, pours out effortlessly. You realize that creation is your natural state. You are no longer just consuming life, you are composing it. Your creative acts are not separate from your spiritual path. They are your spiritual path. Each expression becomes an offering, a bridge between the invisible and the seen. You may find yourself drawn to nature more than ever. Trees, rivers, clouds, they feel like kin. They speak without words, and you understand. You feel their stillness, their patience, their rooted presence. Nature doesn't rush, yet everything gets done. It doesn't compete, yet everything has its place. You start to model this rhythm. You trust your seasons. You bloom when it's time. You rest when it's time. You've stopped forcing outcomes and started allowing emergence. At this point, time itself begins to feel different. Hours seem to stretch and contract depending on your focus. You become more attuned to moments rather than minutes. A single breath, a glance, a whisper from the universe can shift your entire day. You've become sensitive to the subtleties of existence. What others overlook, you now revere. What the world deems insignificant, you experience as sacred. You're no longer chasing milestones. You're cultivating depth. Relationships also begin to take on a new form. You're no longer interested in surface connections. Small talk feels draining. Pretending feels like betrayal. You crave depth, authenticity, resonance. You want conversations that leave you transformed. You want to be seen without the mask, loved without performance, held without needing to explain. And because you've done the work to love yourself in this way, you begin to attract others who can meet you there. The awakened chosen one magnetizes not by effort, but by essence. You also start to notice that many of your desires have either dissolved or evolved. What once seemed important now feels irrelevant. Status, validation, comparison, they lose their grip. You don't want more to impress. You want more to serve. You don't chase a dream to escape your life. You move toward purpose, to embody your light. The desire to accumulate has turned into a desire to contribute. Your mission is no longer about becoming someone. It's about remembering who you are and using that truth as a catalyst for change. This is also the stage where service takes on a new meaning. You're no longer trying to save others. You understand that's not your role. Instead, you inspire others by living in alignment. You teach by example. You lead by energy. You offer your presence, not as a solution, but as a reminder that they too can wake up, that they too are divine. You don't force your light, you simply shine. And those who are ready will rise. You may feel a sense of detachment from the world, not in a dissociative way, but in a liberated way. You care deeply, yet you are no longer entangled. You love fiercely, yet you don't possess. You support others, yet you are not their savior. This sacred detachment is a sign of spiritual maturity. You've realized that clinging creates suffering. You hold everything with open hands now, people, plans, outcomes, and in doing so, you experience freedom. As your awakening deepens, the concept of identity begins to dissolve. You realize that you are not the roles you play, not the story you tell, not the labels you wear. You are the awareness behind it all. You are the field in which life unfolds. This realization doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. You can now engage in life fully, knowing that nothing defines you. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. And yet, in this vastness, you've never been more grounded. You are anchored in truth. You are rooted in presence. You are stable even as everything around you shifts. You've learned that the external world is not your source. It's your reflection. You've stopped trying to control the mirror and started mastering your own frequency. That's how the real magic happens. That's how the inner becomes outer. In these sacred stages, your life becomes a prayer. Every breath, an offering. Every step, a devotion. You don't have to be in a temple to feel the divine, because you've become the temple. The sacred is not something you visit. It's something you live. And in living it, you show others what's possible. Not through preaching, but through presence. Not through convincing, but through embodiment. You've entered the phase where even chaos feels like ceremony, where even pain carries medicine, where even endings feel like beginnings in disguise. You no longer run from discomfort. You sit with it. You listen. You learn. You love. This is not about bypassing difficulty. It's about meeting life with reverence, even when it breaks your heart. Especially then, because now you understand. Every crack is where the light gets in, and every scar is proof that you healed. The chosen one in these final stages is not someone who floats above life, untouched. They are someone who walks through life awake, aware, and anchored. They are not afraid to feel deeply. They are not afraid to lose, to begin again, to be transformed. Because they know nothing real is ever lost, and nothing true can ever be taken. As the awakening of the chosen one matures, you begin to realize that even the concept of awakening itself was never about achieving something. It was always about returning to essence, returning to source, returning to the place within you that has never been touched by fear, by shame, by the illusions of the world. You start to see that everything you've gone through, the trials, the betrayals, the dark nights, were not punishments, but invitations. Each experience carved space inside of you for more light to enter. Each fall was a sacred collapse that cleared the way for deeper roots. And now, those roots are anchored. You're no longer shaken by every storm. You no longer chase certainty. You've come to trust the unknown, because you've learned it always contains a gift. Not always the gift you wanted, but always the one you needed. This is the deep wisdom of the awakened, knowing that what you resist persists, and what you embrace transforms. So you no longer fight life. You partner with it. You dance with it. You listen to its rhythm instead of demanding your own. In this final stretch, solitude becomes sacred. You are no longer afraid of your own company. In fact, you crave it. Not because you reject the world, but because you found a sanctuary within yourself. You understand that silence is not emptiness. It is fullness beyond words. It is where the real answers arise, not from logic, but from presence. You begin to commune with your own soul the way a monk communes with the divine, quietly, reverently, patiently. And in these inner conversations, you receive guidance that no book or teacher could offer. There is a distinct shift in how you perceive time. You no longer feel in a rush to arrive. You are not chasing outcomes or hustling toward worth. You are present, fully, deeply. You can sit with the stillness without needing to fill it. You can allow things to unfold without trying to force them. You trust divine timing, not as a passive hope, but as an active surrender. You don't give up, you let go. There's a difference. One comes from fear, the other from faith. And you've learned the difference intimately. This stage of the journey is also marked by a profound inner balance between the masculine and feminine energies within you. You're no longer dominated by doing, achieving, and asserting. Nor are you lost in passivity or indecision. You move from a place of integrated wholeness, action aligned with intuition, strength softened by compassion. You don't push, you allow. You don't dominate, you collaborate with life. You've become a vessel through which divine intelligence moves, not with force, but with flow. Your relationship with your physical body also begins to transform. It's no longer something you judge, battle, or neglect. It becomes your temple, your compass, your most intimate companion. You listen to its cues, you honor its needs, and you stop overriding its signals for the sake of productivity or appearance. You no longer need your body to look a certain way to feel worthy. Worth is no longer tied to form. It's anchored in essence. And this shift changes everything. What you once called self-care becomes soul care. You nurture your nervous system. You honor your need for rest. You don't glamorize burnout. You don't apologize for your boundaries. You take responsibility for your energy. Not from a place of fear, but from a place of reverence. You've come to understand that your vibration is your true contribution, not your effort, not your performance, but the energy you carry into each moment. And so, you protect your peace like the sacred fire it is. It's in this phase that the idea of purpose takes on a new light. No longer something to find, it becomes something you live. Your purpose is not a job title. It's not a mission statement. It's the way you show up in every interaction. It's how you listen. It's how you breathe. It's how you respond to challenges with grace. You may still have visions, goals, and callings, but they are no longer burdens to achieve. They are extensions of your being. You create because you are called, not because you are compensating for lack. And the calling becomes quieter, more refined. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't demand, it beckons. You learn to follow the subtle pull of resonance. You trust the soft yes in your belly more than the loud noise of the crowd. You don't need a consensus to move forward. You don't need validation to trust your path. You are sovereign now. Not in arrogance, but in awareness. You have reclaimed your inner authority. This reclamation shifts your entire energetic field. You begin to notice how people respond to you differently. Not because you've changed your appearance or personality, but because your energy speaks before you do. You are no longer broadcasting desperation, fear, or people-pleasing. You radiate clarity. You radiate intention. You radiate truth. And truth is magnetic. Not to everyone, but to those who are ready. You don't try to be liked. You try to be real. And in doing so, you draw in the aligned. You also begin to witness the sacred in the mundane. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. Walking becomes a prayer. Everyday acts become rituals. You no longer wait for peak experiences to feel alive. You find the divine in the ordinary. You realize that miracles don't only happen in dramatic moments. They are unfolding constantly, subtly, patiently. And this realization allows you to be fully present in your life instead of waiting for something better to arrive. There is a shedding of the need for drama. You don't chase chaos. You don't mistake intensity for intimacy. You don't equate pain with passion. You want peace now, not as an escape, but as a lifestyle. You cultivate calm, not to avoid life, but to feel it more deeply. You realize that stillness is not stagnation. It is clarity. It is depth. It is power, disguised as quiet. You may also notice that your dreams become more vivid, your intuition sharper, your senses more attuned. You can feel energies in a room. You know when someone is speaking from truth or from trauma. You can discern manipulation from authenticity, not through analysis, but through resonance. You trust your gut. You listen to your inner guidance, and you follow it, even when it doesn't make logical sense, because you've learned that the soul speaks in a different language, one of symbols, sensations, and subtle nudges. You no longer feel the need to argue or convince. You understand that everyone awakens in their own time, in their own way. You don't try to change people. You hold space for their evolution. You don't impose your insights. You share them when invited. You lead by embodiment, not by ego. And when others are not ready, you release them with love. Because you've learned that love doesn't cling. It blesses. It frees. It trusts. This stage is also marked by forgiveness. Deep, radical forgiveness. Not because others always deserve it, but because you deserve peace. You release the weight of resentment, not to let them off the hook, but to unhook yourself from suffering. You understand that holding on to pain doesn't protect you, it poisons you. And so, you forgive, again and again, until your heart is light, until your past no longer defines your presence. You no longer see life as happening to you. You see it as happening through you. You are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are a co-creator with the universe. This doesn't mean you bypass injustice or deny grief. It means you meet it with awareness, with intention, with soul. You don't just react, you respond. You don't just survive, you alchemize. And in doing so, you transmute not just your own pain, but the pain of generations before you. Legacy takes on a new meaning. It's not about being remembered. It's about being real. It's not about leaving your name behind. It's about leaving light behind. You want to plant seeds, not for your own glory, but for the healing of those yet to come. You understand that your choices ripple across timelines, that your healing liberates more than just you. And so, you live with intention. You move with purpose. You love with presence. You are the chosen one, not because you are better, but because you said yes. Yes to the call. Yes to the unraveling. Yes to the becoming. And now, you walk with a quiet confidence, knowing that your path is sacred, even when it's lonely. Knowing that your awakening is a gift, even when it feels heavy. Knowing that your light is needed, even when others don't understand it. You don't need recognition to keep going. You don't need proof to keep believing. You have become the evidence. You have become the prayer. You have become the vessel through which spirit flows into form. And that is enough. There comes a point in the chosen one's final spiritual stages where you begin to witness the end of the illusion of separation. Between you and others, you and nature, you and the divine. The boundaries that once seemed so real, so rigid, begin to dissolve. You no longer perceive the world through the lens of ego. Me versus them, right versus wrong, light versus dark. Instead, you begin to see all as one dynamic expression of consciousness. Duality becomes less important. You move into unity awareness, not as a philosophy, but as your lived truth. You recognize the people who once triggered you as sacred mirrors, the situations that once broke you as divine interventions. The parts of yourself you once rejected now return to be integrated, not banished. You see your shadow not as the enemy, but as the teacher. You no longer fear your darkness because you have learned to meet it with compassion. And in doing so, you liberate yourself from the cycle of suppression and shame. You understand now that awakening is not about erasing the ego, but transforming your relationship with it. The ego is no longer the ruler of your mind. It becomes a servant to the soul. When fear rises, you see it clearly, name it gently, and choose differently. You don't suppress your emotions, you listen to them. You move through them. You alchemize them. You allow your anger to show you where your boundaries are. You allow your grief to soften your heart. You allow your joy to expand your capacity for light. At this stage, you begin to carry the frequency of love in a way that is not performative but embodied. Love is not something you give to get. It's not a transaction. It's your natural state. It flows through your tone, your gaze, your actions, not out of obligation, but out of overflow. You love without attachment, without conditions, without fear. You love in a way that liberates, not entangles. You know now that love is not just an emotion, it's an energy, a presence, a force that transforms. You also begin to experience synchronicity on an entirely new level. What once seemed like coincidences now appear as cosmic choreography. You see the signs, you hear the whispers, you notice the numbers, the symbols, the repeating messages. Life becomes an ongoing dialogue between your soul and the universe. You no longer beg for signs. You receive them in stillness, in openness. You are in alignment now, and that alignment is magnetic. In this place of deep connection, you begin to reclaim your spiritual gifts, not as egoic tools, but as sacred responsibilities. You may receive visions. Your intuition may sharpen. Your healing hands may activate. Your words may carry resonance that touches souls. And yet, you no longer seek to impress anyone with these gifts. You use them humbly, with reverence, with discernment. You know now that gifts are not proof of worth. They are vessels of service. This phase also brings a new level of discernment, not judgment, but clarity. You know what is true for you and what is not. You are no longer swayed by trends, by public opinion, by the need to be liked. You no longer dilute your truth to make others comfortable. But you also don't wield truth as a weapon. You speak with grace. You walk with integrity. You embody alignment in silence, in presence, in essence. Your life becomes your message. The final stages are quiet, not because nothing is happening, but because everything is. Deep inner reconstruction takes place beneath the surface. You begin shedding lifetimes of conditioning, ancestral patterns, societal programming. You no longer carry what was never yours. You give back the burdens you inherited. You forgive your lineage, not to excuse it, but to free yourself from its weight. You release old contracts, outdated identities, karmic entanglements, all with love. You now understand that healing is not linear. Some days, your light will feel radiant. Other days, your shadows may resurface. But now, you no longer see that as regression. You know the spiral of growth. You honor the cycles of death and rebirth within you. You don't fear the descent. You descend with awareness, knowing that each time you go deeper into yourself, you rise even higher in your light. There is also a sacred loneliness that emerges here, a kind of holy solitude, not because you are abandoned, but because so few have walked this far. It can feel isolating, but it is not emptiness. It is spaciousness. It is the space where your spirit expands beyond identity, beyond belonging, beyond needing to be understood. You begin to find comfort in being misunderstood, because you know your path is not for everyone to see. It is between you and the divine. Your definition of success transforms. It's no longer about outcomes. It's about alignment. Peace becomes the new wealth. Presence becomes the new power. Authenticity becomes the new achievement. You no longer chase visibility. You cherish invisibility. You no longer perform. You embody. You live from soul, not strategy. From truth, not trends. From depth, not display. Your relationship with death also evolves. You no longer fear it. You understand that death is not the opposite of life. It is part of it. You begin to see all endings as initiations. Each goodbye is a portal. Each loss holds a blessing. You do not cling to form. You honor the essence behind it. Whether it's people, places, roles, or beliefs, you are willing to let go of what no longer serves your highest becoming. Because you know that surrender is not weakness. It is the doorway to liberation. Service becomes a natural expression of your being. You no longer serve from martyrdom or guilt. You serve from overflow. You give not to fix, but to empower. You offer not to rescue, but to remind others of their own light. Your presence alone becomes healing. Your energy becomes medicine. You become a lighthouse, not by forcing anyone to follow, but simply by standing in your truth. You begin to move slower. You eat with gratitude. You walk with intention. You speak with care. You sleep with peace. You laugh with your whole body. You cry without shame. You dance with the divine, in the mundane. Life becomes sacred again, not in some grand dramatic way, but in the gentle awareness that every breath is a miracle, every heartbeat is a gift, every moment is holy. The awakened chosen one also becomes aware of collective energies. You can feel the emotional tides of the planet. You sense the collective grief, the rising consciousness, the spiritual warfare unfolding in subtle realms. And yet, you do not absorb it. You witness it with compassion. You hold your center. You stay grounded in truth. You don't escape the world. You anchor light into it. Boundaries become clearer. Not walls, but energetic gates. You no longer allow access to everyone. Not because you judge them, but because you protect your field. You know the cost of leaking your energy. You no longer sacrifice yourself to be accepted. You honor your intuition when it says no. You walk away when your peace is compromised. You don't explain. You choose. And amidst all this deep evolution, there's a returning to simplicity. You don't need constant stimulation. You find joy in a quiet morning, in birdsong, in a cup of tea. You realize that the highest frequencies are often the softest. Grace doesn't scream. Love doesn't force. Truth doesn't compete. And you, in your fullness, no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. You become comfortable with your own light, no longer dimming it for others, no longer afraid of what it might attract or provoke. You shine, not to be seen, but because it is your nature. You shine even in the dark. You shine even when no one applauds. You are no longer performing. You are being. And that beingness is your greatest offering to the world. You walk through the world with sacred neutrality, not detached, but sovereign, not aloof, but centered. You are moved, but not controlled. You care deeply, but you are not consumed. You are anchored in the divine while walking fully in the human. You are the bridge, the portal, the embodiment of what happens when spirit takes form. This is the final awakening, not some explosive arrival, but a gentle homecoming. You are not who you were. You are not even who you thought you would become. You are something more quiet, more vast, more real. You are presence. You are awareness. You are a soul that remembered itself. And now, you live from that remembrance. The chosen one, having come this far on the path, now enters the realm of pure embodiment. This stage is no longer about seeking answers. It is about living them. Your journey has revealed to you that truth is not static. It breathes, it evolves, it deepens. And so do you. The need to label your spiritual experience fades. The need to be understood disappears. There is only this, the sacred, continuous becoming. In this final stage, identity dissolves. You are no longer attached to being the healer, the teacher, the awakened one. You wear no spiritual badge. You are simply a soul, fully present, fully integrated, fully surrendered to the flow of divine intelligence. You know you're not better than others. You're not higher, not more chosen, not more enlightened. You're just aware that your awakening is not an endpoint, but an eternal unfolding. Silence becomes your sanctuary, not out of avoidance, but out of reverence. You no longer need to fill every space with words or concepts. You sit in stillness and allow life to speak. In that stillness, you receive truths that no book can teach. You feel timelines collapsing, energies shifting, karma dissolving, not because you chase those things, but because your frequency naturally clears what no longer belongs. You begin to recognize yourself in every face: the beggar, the stranger, the child, the enemy. all are reflections of you in different states of remembering. Compassion expands, judgment dissolves. You no longer look down on those still asleep. You hold space for them. You know how dark the night can be. You know how painful the shedding is. And so, you walk softly. You lead without force. You shine without seeking praise. You may still feel pain, but it does not define you. Emotions rise like tides, and you let them pass without clinging. You do not resist your humanity. You cherish it. You understand now that your vulnerability is not weakness. It is the portal through which divine light enters. You are allowed to be both divine and wounded, both strong and tender, both powerful and gentle. This is your wholeness. Your relationship with time shifts. You no longer rush. You do not force outcomes. You understand that everything unfolds in divine sequence. Delays are no longer disappointments. They are sacred pauses. Redirections are no longer setbacks. They are higher alignments. You don't chase. You magnetize. You don't strive. You allow. You don't push against the current. You surrender to its intelligence. You start to notice that your very presence alters spaces. Your energy speaks before you do. People open up around you, not because you try, but because your authenticity grants them permission to be real. You carry peace, and others feel it. You radiate clarity, and confusion dissolves in your field. You've become a tuning fork, attuning others to what's possible just by being yourself. Your dreams become clearer, your sleep deeper. Your body, once overwhelmed by spiritual upgrades and emotional clearing, now begins to feel balanced again. You nourish yourself with love, with food that honors your vessel, with movements that awaken your cells. You no longer punish your body or treat it as a burden. You recognize it as the sacred temple that made this awakening possible. And so, you tend to it with care. Nature becomes your teacher again. You see messages in the sky, wisdom in the trees, lessons in the rain. You walk barefoot on the earth, not just to ground, but to remember. You speak to the stars, not for answers, but to commune. You feel the pulse of Gaia in your body. You no longer see yourself as separate from the natural world. You are the natural world remembering itself. Your intuition now operates as your first language. It doesn't shout, it whispers, and you hear it. You trust it. You follow it. You no longer need long processes to make decisions. You feel the yes. You feel the number. You act in alignment with what is true in the moment. Doubt no longer clouds your path. You walk with quiet confidence, not because you know all the answers, but because you know how to listen. You also know when to retreat, when to rest, when to step back from the noise. You no longer feel guilty for protecting your peace. You understand that your nervous system is sacred, and chaos is not a badge of honor. You don't glorify burnout. You honor your rhythms. You say no with love. You don't explain your boundaries. You simply live by them. And in doing so, you teach others to honor theirs. You become aware of the collective awakening. You sense the waves of souls who are just beginning to stir. You see the chaos in the world not as a collapse, but as a clearing. You know that the old systems must fall so the new can rise. You hold hope, not as blind optimism, but as a deep knowing that light always finds a way. That consciousness cannot be reversed, that once the soul awakens, it cannot go back to sleep. You realize you no longer need to be at the center of attention. You're okay being the unseen architect, the quiet guide, the frequency holder. You let go of the need to convince, to convert, to control. You walk your path and trust that those meant to cross it will feel your energy and remember something ancient within themselves. You no longer use your voice to be heard. You use it to liberate. And yet, paradoxically, you're more you than ever before. Stripped of conditioning, stripped of performance, stripped of masks. You speak more clearly, laugh more fully, move more freely. You are not trying to become anything. You are simply allowing all that you already are to be revealed, and it is beautiful. Not in the way the world defines beauty, but in the way presence, authenticity, and soulfulness radiate through the human form. You see now that awakening was never about escaping this world. It was about returning to it, transformed, with clearer eyes, with an open heart, with unwavering purpose. You don't float above the messiness of life. You enter it, carry light into it, hold grace within it. You are the living integration of spirit and matter, the divine in human skin. Not because you seek to be, but because you have surrendered everything that isn't. You move through the world like a silent prayer. Every step, every breath, every glance carries the imprint of all you've walked through, all you've alchemized, all you've become. You are no longer waiting for a miracle. You are the miracle in motion. You are not chasing the divine. You are the divine remembering itself in motion, in form, in service. And as you move deeper into this stage, you understand something profoundly humbling. There is no final arrival. There is only deeper remembering, more gentle unfolding, a forever becoming. Awakening is not an event. It's a way of being, a way of walking, a way of loving. And now, you walk that path, not with urgency, but with devotion. This is your becoming, chosen one. Not because you are better than others, but because you had the courage to let go of everything that you were not. Because you said yes when it was terrifying. Because you kept going when it broke you. Because you softened when the world told you to harden. Because you remembered when others forgot. You are not done, but you are awake. And that awakening will echo through every life you touch, every space you enter, every moment you live. You don't need a title. You don't need applause. You don't need a platform. You are already fulfilling your purpose by being fully, freely, authentically, powerfully. Your journey continues. And now, you walk it as the soul who has remembered and become the light you were always meant to carry.